foggy night, shadows creeping slow, whispers in the wind, where'd Johnny go? Blood on the hay, pitchfork gleam, midnight moon, a witness to a scream, barn doors creaking, secrets kept tight. Old man Joe seen a deadly sight, no justice found, just a broken plow, crows peck the ground, dead man's vow. Murder in the meadow, lies thick as dust, promises shattered, betrayed by trust, chaos in the cornfields.
I'm here with Country Diggers. Today we're going to be reading from The Bloody Century, True Tales of Murder in 19th Century America by Robert Wilhelm. He also does the murderbygaslight.com website. And today we'll be reading about Jenny Kramer, found drifting with the tide. Right. Found drifting with the tide. When the body of beautiful young Jenny Kramer was found on a sandbar in the ocean of West Haven, Connecticut, in August 1881, it was assumed that she had drowned and had possibly committed suicide. But there was no water in her lungs, and a thorough examination of the body revealed that she had been poisoned. It was also revealed that she had been violently raped within the previous 48 hours. Suspicion fell immediately on Jimmy Malley, Jenny's current beau and nephew of the richest man in New Haven. The problem for the prosecution and everyone since was determining what exactly happened in the last 2 days of Jenny Kramer's life. The date, August 6th, 1881. Location, New Haven, Connecticut. Victim, Jenny Kramer. Cause of death, poisoning. Accused, Jimmy Malley, Walter Malley, and Blanche Douglas. Jenny Kramer was the daughter of Jacob Kramer, a New Haven, Connecticut cigar merchant, and his wife Christina. Sickly as a child, probably anemic, Jenny was pampered by her family and was the only one of the Kramers' 3 children who did not work in the cigar store. She grew up to be a striking beauty, with dark brown hair and dark blue eyes, and a fair and soft complexion. Jenny Kramer was universally known as the Belle of New Haven. At age 15, Jenny left school and, with her mother's blessing, devoted her time to her appearance and her social life. Jenny had many suitors, and Mrs. Kramer kept a sharp eye on the kind of men who courted Jenny, hoping Jenny could use her beauty as means to rise in class. Jenny became a notorious flirt, very forward in approaching men who hadn't been introduced to her. She loved having a good time and staying out late, and although she kept her virtue intact, she had a reputation as a fast girl. In 1881, at the age of 21, Jenny met Jimmy Malley, who was 2 years her senior. Like Jenny, Jimmy liked to dress well and have fun, and he still lived at home with his parents. Jimmy worked in his uncle's department store, and Jenny would stop in to flirt with him. Jimmy was soon infatuated with her. Jimmy Malley was especially close to his cousin Walter, son of Edward Malley, owner of Malley's department store and the largest taxpayer in New Haven. Walter was the opposite of Jimmy, shy and reserved. He preferred art and music to sports and social life. He had attended Seton Hall and Yale, but graduated from neither. Walter showed no ambition and was a disappointment to his father. Walter and Jimmy took frequent trips to New York City, and there at a brothel run by Lizzie Bundy, they met a young prostitute named Blanche Douglas. She was born Anna Kearns, but escaping first from an abusive stepfather, then an abusive husband, she changed her name and joined Lizzie Bundy's house. She had only been there 2 weeks when she met Walter and Jimmy. Walter fell madly in love with Blanche Douglas, spending 2 or 3 nights a week with her and writing her letters and telegrams when he was not with her. Blanche had no education, and Walter wanted to introduce her to art, literature, and the finer things. Against her better judgment, Blanche agreed to visit Walter in New Haven when his father was out of town. Blanche was overwhelmed by his wealth. Meanwhile, Jimmy was trying to court Jenny Kramer, but she had refused to go riding with him without a chaperone. The solution was to go out together with Walter and Blanche, who was introduced to Jenny as Walter's rich fiance from Long Island. They would go riding together and go to restaurants and other resorts where young people gathered. The night of July 23rd, 1881, she did not come home until 4:00 a.m., and Mrs. Kramer was beside herself. Jenny told her that they had gone back to the Malleys' mansion, and though she had tried to leave, Jimmy refused to escort her. On Wednesday, August the 3rd, Jenny went out again with Jimmy, Walter, and Blanche. Walter's father had gone to Saratoga, so the 2 couples stayed all night at the mansion. Jenny returned home Thursday morning, accompanied by Blanche, and had a terrible argument with her mother, who was upset over what the neighbors would think. Blanche said that Jenny had stayed in her hotel room and nothing improper had happened. Mrs. Kramer would have none of it, and told Jenny if she were going to stay out all night, she should find her a new place to live. Jenny left with Blanche. It was the last time her mother saw her alive. Around dawn on Saturday, August 6th, an oysterman named Ashel Curtis, while preparing his boat before heading out for his day's catch, saw a white object on a nearby sandbar swaying back and forth with the incoming tide. It was the body of a young woman, finely dressed, all in white. She had died recently enough that there had been no decomposition. It would not have been unusual for a young woman to be so dressed up at the beach. The proper Savin Rock amusement park was nearby, and a woman fitting Jenny's description was seen there the night before. Other observers soon recognized her as Jenny Kramer, and though there were indications to the contrary, it was assumed that she had drowned. When the circumstances of her disappearance were learned, it was further assumed that she had drowned herself in despair. While the body was still in a boathouse on the beach, Dr. Painter and Dr. Shepard performed an examination. They determined that there was no water in her lungs or stomach, and it was unlikely that she had drowned. They also found that she had lost her virginity within 24 to 48 hours of her death, and it was indicated that she had been violently raped. An inquest was scheduled for the following morning. Jimmy, Walter, and Blanche were questioned by reporters and Sheriff Peck, and after some initial contradictory statements, they all agreed that they had been with Jenny Wednesday night, but none of them had seen her afternoon on Thursday. They had not been at Savin Rock Friday night. Edward Malley returned from Saratoga to find his son and nephew implemented in the death of Jenny Kramer. He wasted no time hiring two powerful attorneys to represent the boys and Blanche Douglas, and two private detectives to track down clues and witnesses. When confronted by reporters about Walter's relationship with Blanche and the goings-on at the mansion on Wednesday night, he denied any knowledge of Walter ever being with a girl, then added, "Boys will be boys, and you'll find that's all there is to the matter." An autopsy that lasted 7 hours produced no new information. It was also certain that Jenny Kramer did not drown, but the cause of death remained unknown. Various organs were removed and preserved in jars, leading to rumors that the doctors would look for traces of drugs or poison. It was probably thought that Jenny had been drugged with laudanum or chloroform before she was raped. At the inquest, Blanche Douglas testified that the two couples had been at the Malley Mansion on Wednesday night and that Blanche had been too sick to return to her hotel. Walter said she could sleep there, and she persuaded Jenny to stay with her. They slept in the same room. The next morning they had breakfast together, then Jenny left her. After her testimony, Blanche returned to New York. The prosecution realized that talking to Blanche away from the Malleys was their best hope of getting a conviction. When they went looking for her in New York, they found she had given a false address. She was soon tracked down to Lizzie Bundy's and her true identity made known. She was arrested for perjury and extradited to New Haven. One of the autopsy doctors, Dr. Painter, had taken special interest in the case and advised Blanche to sever her ties with the Malleys, since they were likely to betray her. Blanche was afraid of jail and agreed to cooperate when Sheriff Peck offered to let her stay with his family rather than be locked in jail. In several closed-door sessions, Blanche made a confession of sorts to the inquest jury. She revealed that she had been a part of a scheme to assist Jimmy in seducing Jenny. The night Jenny had stayed out until 4 a.m., they had been in a private room over the Red Cliff restaurant. She and Walter went to another room, and she could hear Jenny crying loudly, "Don't, don't." On Wednesday night, August 3rd, they were at the mansion and got quite drunk on wine. Then Blanche feigned sickness to get Jenny to stay with her. But they did not stay together. Blanche went with Walter, and Jimmy carried Jenny, kicking and screaming, to another room. That night she heard loud, frightening screams from that room. She also testified that two men, one of whom was Edward Malley's brother, came to her in New York and asked how much money would convince her to take an ocean liner to Europe for a year or so. That's what money does to you. It corrupts. We see it right now in our country. All right. But anyway. But she still insisted that she did not see Jenny Kramer after Thursday at noon, saying, if you was to hang a rope around my neck, I couldn't say different. A chemical analysis of Jenny's organs had revealed 0.8 of a grain of arsenic distributed among her stomach, esophagus, liver, kidneys, heart, lungs, intestines, and brain, indicating that 2 to 4 grains, a lethal dose of arsenic, had been ingested prior to death. Man, that's a lot. Jenny and Walter Malley were arrested for for murder on August 15th. The inquest, which began on August 6th, interviewed more than 50 witnesses and lasted until September 3rd. Blanche had been held on perjury charges, but when it was determined that she would give no more information, the charge was changed to murder. Before the murder trial itself, the case was put before the Justice Court to determine if there was probable cause to try the Malleys and Blanche for murder. 5 counts of murder were listed in the indictment against the Malleys: arsenic poisoning, drowning, suffocation, asphyxiation, chloroform, and the use of liquor and drugs. For Blanche, the only charge was arsenic poisoning. The trial before Justice Stephen Booth examined more than 200 witnesses, mostly people claiming to have seen the defendants at various times and places, and lasted until the end of October. At the end, Justice Booth found probable cause to charge James Malley, Walter Malley, and Blanche Douglas with murder, but limited to 1 count, arsenic poisoning. Trial, April 25th, 1882. The trial would not be held until April 25th, 1882. It would take a week to impanel a jury because of the difficulty in finding anyone in New Haven who did not already have an opinion on the guilt of the Malleys. The charge of arsenic poisoning presented a problem for both the prosecution and the defense. The prosecution could not accuse the defendants of suffocating Jenny on impulse. Arsenic poisoning implied planning and deliberation. The defense would have trouble proving proving Jenny fell or jumped deliberately into the water. Both sides agreed to exhume the body for a complete analysis, including the bones, to determine exactly how much arsenic was ingested. While the prosecution wanted an exact amount to present to the jury, the defense hoped to prove that Jenny was an arsenic eater, a woman who indulged in the popular Victorian practice of ingesting small amounts of arsenic to lighten the complexion. That is stupid. How did they get so stupid back then? They're stupid now, but how did they get stupid then too? It must have come up through ancestors, I reckon. I don't know. Anyway, she was a woman who indulged in the popular Victorian practice of ingesting small amounts of arsenic to lighten the complexion. That is stupid. Okay. It was determined that Jenny had ingested at least 3 grains of arsenic, but there was none in her bones, indicating that she was not a habitual user. Well, she was smart then. But then she got murdered. Okay. In the end, however, there was only circumstantial evidence, sparse and vague, that the defendants had poisoned Jenny. After deliberating only an hour, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. Verdict, not guilty. Aftermath: Jacob Kramer had been devastated by the death of his daughter and did not live to see the end of the trial. The official cause of death was listed as, I don't know what this word is, PHTHISIS, another word for consumption, okay? But it was more likely suicide. By 1883, Krista Kramer had become mentally unbalanced and was convinced that her daughter was not dead and would be coming back to her. In July 1891, Krista Kramer hanged herself. In February 1882, Mally's department store burned to the ground. Arson was suspected, and the insurance company refused to pay on a technicality. Walter Malley used his time in prison to draw landscapes on the cell wall and to compose a waltz under the elms, which was published and sold as sheet music. Another piece of music, found drifting with the tide, was written about Jenny Kramer by A.C. Willis. I tried to find these songs, but I reckon they're too old to be in the database. I don't know. I could not find the audio to them, but I did find where looked up the composer and everything. I found A.C. Willis, found Drifting with the Tide, and also Walter Malley's Under the Elms, but not the music part. I couldn't find the audio music. Following the verdict, the Malleys held a lavish party at the Tone 10 Hotel, which was sharply criticized by the press. Blanche Douglas went back to jail that night because she had nowhere else to go. Walter Malley kept in contact with Blanche Douglas and at one point was a target of a blackmail scheme involving letters stolen from Blanche. He married a woman named Anna Madden, who many believe was actually Blanche Douglas, Anna Kearns. The true circumstances surrounding the poisoning of Jenny Kramer have never been determined. Well, there's a mystery for you then. But seems that the rich people got away with murder and Blanche Douglas spent some time in jail. Oh well. Hope you enjoyed and see you later.